Now, I know you've met Gaspar before.
I have.
And I hadn't met him until today. And I know he's Argentinian because he is Argentinian, and I've read all the stuff.
That's it.
But for all the world, that interview was full of Gallic charm, I thought. If he'd rolled up a Gauloise or a Gitane, I would not have been surprised.
It's interesting because it's perfectly possible to get the impression that if you look at Gaspar Noé's back catalogue, which is extreme cinema and then some, you know, if you're looking at films like Into the Void and Love 3D and Irreversible, of which I carried somebody, those are really sort of full-on experiential films. And I've seen Gaspar introducing his films when he's kind of, you know, bouncing around, and it's very interesting to see him as, you know, as thoughtful as he is, but not least because Vortex is a very, very tonally different film to his previous work. I know that he says that there are comparisons with somebody. It is very, very different. So at the risk of repeating some of the things he said, so it's a couple played by Françoise Lebrun and Dario Argento. Argento, who will be known to most people as the director of films like Suspiria, the original Suspiria, Profondo Rosso, Opera, is writing a book about films and memory and dreams, and he's quoting Edgar Allan Poe, and clearly his character is very, very close to Argento. It is, you know, it's an Argento-esque character. His wife, who still writes prescriptions, is in the process of succumbing to dementia, to Alzheimer's, and becoming lost to her husband and son. And the way the film is shot is that it's a split screen, so there's two screens that you see side by side. That, again, as we just discussed then, gives you the impression of people living in the same physical space, but separated. And even though occasionally the frames cross over, I mean, there are moments when there's two cameras looking at the same thing and the frames do cross over. Somebody will reach from one frame into another. At one point, one of the characters has two heads because of the way that it's framed. And I think, and gradually during the course of it, the separation between them widens and the gulf between them gets, you know, worse. But also the film is keen to remind us that everyone's life is more complicated than you would think, and characters who you're introduced to, you know, as one thing, as the drama expands, you realise that everybody's got all these alternate lives, these other lives, these hidden lives going on at the same time. So obviously the whole thing feels very naturalistic. You do feel that you are watching these things play out for real. I think that anybody, I mean, obviously we've talked about films addressing Alzheimer's before. You know, there was the Anthony Hopkins film just recently.
Yes.
One of the reasons Vortex works well is because I believe in the characters, because the characters are very, very close to home. Secondly, anyone who has had any experience of relatives or loved ones dealing with Alzheimer's or dementia will recognize the strange sort of flow of, like, at some points the central character seems to know nothing, but at other points seems to be coherent. And that thing about drifting in and out, coming in and out of the frame, as it were, and the sense of the gulf between people widening, but then suddenly the water's closing up again. The analogy that I'm reaching for is, you know, there's that causeway. There's an island somewhere in the Thames, I think, where they shot The Woman in Black, and the causeway opens up. And then the causeway and then the waters come across it, and it's kind of like that. There's a weird tidal thing to it. I do think the film captures that well. It is a long film. It's 2 hours 20 minutes long, and I read about that. And I think it's necessarily a difficult ask for for distributors, because it's not a film with a, you know, great happy. It's not a film which ends with Hugh Grant doing a song and dance number like at the end of Paddington 2. This drama is going only one way. But I think it's sincere, and I think the split screen works a lot better than I thought, because I have to confess that when I heard that was how it was done, I slightly flinched and thought, oh, okay, is that going to work for me? Did it work for you?
I think it did, actually. I think that whole, I mean, you mentioned it in the interview, but that whole idea of living separate lives, which is what they do, which is what they are doing increasingly, it did accentuate that. And I thought, I mean, I don't want to watch it again, but I can imagine if I do watch it again, I might see sort of a different film, because he doesn't know which screen we're mainly watching. In fact, are we watching them both at the same time? Can you actually take that in? I think you probably can. So I thought it worked.
Oh, that's fascinating, that idea that you're not actually sure which of the two screens the audience... Because you do, as you watch it, you definitely do.
See both?
No, I think you choose one or the other, because there are scenes in which, for example, he's in the apartment and she goes out and she goes to the supermarket and gets us, and then he goes out after her. And you are absolutely invited to concentrate on. I mean, you're watching both of them, but you are actually focusing on one of them. And I found that I instinctively focused on him. I focused on what he was doing, partly, I think, because he's a film critic and he's a film writer and he's male and it's Dario Argento. No, you know what I mean? It's like, I know that's a crass thing, but that was where my eye was led. So, yes, it is fascinating that you watch it again, you might see a different film.
That's why, yes, I think there's a whole bunch of things which it would repay going back to.
Yeah, and I think it is more than a gimmick. I think it does work. It does make sense. It does actually tell the story.
You mentioned Amor and... Is it The Father, wasn't it? The Anthony Hopkins movie. And I wonder if, as this becomes increasingly a problem, which filmmakers are aware of because their parents and their grandparents have these stories to tell, that it will feature more and more in mainstream movie making, because it's a real fact for so many people.
And it was fascinating when Gaspar said that people are now more scared of Alzheimer's and dementia than they are of World War III. And then he said, well, people of our age. It was also nice that he said, you're both obviously in your 50s. And I noticed you didn't correct him.
I absolutely
did not.
You didn't.
I
thought about saying something, but
I just let it lie.
I thought we'd leave
I just let it be.
Well, going back to the title of one of his other films, Irreversible, that's, that as soon as you're talking about dementia, this is going in one way.
Yeah, and of course which is
a problem for filmmakers.
The interesting thing about Irreversible is that one of the arguments about it is it is a film that demonstrates that a revenge movie can only have a happy ending if you play it in reverse.
Yes. I'm going to have to think about that. Maybe I'll come back to it in take two.
Back to it, yeah.
That's the whole point of it. Anyway, Vortex is Gaspar Noé's current movie. There'll be more with Gaspar in take two.